Benzite homeworld of Rondamar erupted into chaos as panicked reports flooded in from every corner of the galaxy. A human, of all beings, had achieved the mathematically impossible. Word of Jeffrey Miller's paradigm-shattering proof spread like wildfire through the galactic scientific community, leaving shock and disbelief in its wake. The 27-year-old MIT prodigy's equations challenged the very foundations of Benzite mathematics, threatening to upend centuries of established theory and the long-standing belief in human intellectual inferiority. As the news reached Rondamar, a schism formed among the Benzite elite. The majority, driven by fear and wounded pride, called for the immediate suppression of Jeffrey's work, determined to maintain the status quo at any cost. But one esteemed scholar, Talon, recognized the proof's staggering potential. She understood that Jeffrey's creative leaps could revolutionize fields from physics to cosmology, paving the way for unimaginable advancements. Risking her reputation and safety, Talon arranged a covert journey to Earth, knowing she had to unravel the intricacies of Jeffrey's reasoning firsthand. But even as she raced to make contact, sinister forces were mobilizing to silence the young mathematician and bury his discoveries. With the future of both civilizations hanging in the balance, Talon and Jeffrey found themselves at the center of a brewing storm, one that could bring about a new era of unprecedented progress, or plunge the galaxy into a devastating conflict. The clock was ticking, and the fate of billions now rested on the power of one human mind to navigate the impossible. As Talon's sleek Benzite starship sliced through the void of interstellar space, the young mathematician immersed herself in the intricacies of human culture. She pored over databases filled with Earth's history, art, and scientific achievements, marveling at the sheer diversity of human experience. The chaotic, multifaceted nature of human society stood in stark contrast to the orderly, homogeneous world of the Benzites. When her ship finally entered Earth's orbit, Talon felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation. She stepped onto the MIT campus, taking in the bustling energy of the human students and faculty. Dr. Haruki Nakamura, a distinguished mathematician, greeted her with a warm smile and a firm handshake. "Welcome to Earth, Talon," Dr. Nakamura said. "We've been eagerly awaiting your arrival." Talon nodded, her mind still processing the alien sights and sounds of the human world. "Thank you, Dr. Nakamura. I'm honored to be here." As they walked through the halls of the mathematics department, Talon's thoughts turned to Jeffrey Miller. She had studied his groundbreaking proof in detail, but the opportunity to collaborate with him directly filled her with a sense of exhilaration. When they finally met in person, Jeffrey greeted Talon with an enthusiastic grin. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Talon. I've been looking forward to this moment." Despite the language barrier and cultural differences, the two mathematicians quickly found common ground. They spent hours huddled over whiteboards, dissecting the intricacies of Jeffrey's proof. Talon marveled at the unorthodox leaps of logic and creative problem-solving that had allowed Jeffrey to transcend the limitations of traditional Benzite mathematics. As they worked together, Talon began to grasp the fundamental differences between human and Benzite cognition. While Benzites relied on rigid algorithmic thinking, humans were more prone to imaginative lateral leaps that could yield astonishing breakthroughs. Jeffrey's proof was not an isolated anomaly, but a manifestation of a profound cognitive difference between their species. However, their collaboration was soon overshadowed by troubling news from Rondamar. Conservative factions within the Benzite government were moving to suppress Jeffrey's work, fearing that it could destabilize the galactic order and undermine the assumption of Benzite superiority. Talon and Jeffrey knew they were in a race against time. They worked feverishly to translate Jeffrey's insights into terms that both human and Benzite mathematicians could understand, hoping to disseminate the principles behind the impossible proof before reactionary forces could silence them. As they labored side by side, a deepening sense of camaraderie grew between them. They began to see the potential for a new era of human-Benzite cooperation, one based on mutual respect and the shared pursuit of knowledge. But the road ahead would not be easy. With powerful forces arrayed against them, Talon and Jeffrey knew that their struggle was only just beginning. They would need all their combined brilliance and dedication to overcome the challenges that lay ahead and secure a future of unprecedented progress. for both their civilizations. As Talon and Jeffrey huddled over the intricate equations sprawling across the whiteboard, a sudden commotion outside the lab shattered their concentration. The door burst open, revealing a tall, imposing Benzite flanked by two armed guards. Talon's eyes widened in recognition as Zorgax, a high-ranking official from the conservative faction, strode into the room. "Talon, you are hereby ordered to return to Rondamar immediately," Zorgax declared, his deep voice resonating with authority. "Cease all contact with this human, and come with me at once." Talon stood her ground, her hands clenched at her sides. "I cannot comply, Zorgax. The implications of Jeffrey's proof are too significant to ignore. We must continue our work." Zorgax's eyes narrowed, his expression hardening. "You are risking everything by aligning yourself with this human. The Benzite authorities will take whatever steps necessary to contain the situation. Do not test our tenacity." Jeffrey stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Talon is here as my collaborator and guest. She will not be intimidated into abandoning our research." Zorgax's gaze shifted to Jeffrey, a flicker of disdain crossing his features. "You have no say in this matter, human. Talon is a Benzite citizen and subject to our laws." Undeterred by Zorgax's threats, Talon and Jeffrey resumed their work with renewed urgency. They reached out to mathematicians and scientists across both Earth and Rondamar, sharing their groundbreaking findings in the hopes of building a groundswell of support. As word of the proof spread, reactions ranged from awe to outrage. Some human scientists hailed Jeffrey as a visionary genius, while skeptics questioned the validity of his claims. On Rondamar, the revelation of a human mathematician surpassing Benzite intellect struck at the core of their long-held assumptions of superiority. Amidst the growing controversy, Talon began receiving anonymous threats, urging her to abandon her collaboration with Jeffrey. The messages carried an ominous tone, hinting at dire consequences should she persist. Talon suspected Zorgax and his allies were behind the intimidation, but she refused to be cowed. Late one night, as they pored over the proof's deeper implications, Talon and Jeffrey made a startling realization. The fundamental cognitive differences the equations revealed could have profound consequences far beyond the realm of mathematics. They began to grapple with philosophical and existential questions that challenged the very nature of intelligence and creativity. "If humans can make intuitive leaps that Benzites cannot," Talon mused, her brow furrowed in concentration, "what does that say about the potential of our species? Are there other ways of understanding that we have yet to discover?" Jeffrey nodded, his eyes alight with excitement. "This proof is just the beginning. It opens up entirely new avenues of inquiry, new possibilities for collaboration between our civilizations." As they delved deeper into the implications, Talon and Jeffrey knew they were on the cusp of a revelation that could alter the course of history, but they also understood the formidable forces arrayed against them, determined to preserve the status quo. With time running out and the stakes higher than ever, Talon and Jeffrey redoubled their efforts to bring the full truth of the proof to light. They knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges and opposition, but they were determined to see their mission through to the end. The future of both Earth and Rondamar hung in the balance as Talon and Jeffrey raced against the clock, their groundbreaking discovery poised to either unite their civilizations in a new era of understanding or plunge them into a devastating conflict. The outcome would depend on their ability to navigate the treacherous currents of politics, prejudice, and the very limits of knowledge itself. The first sign of trouble came when Talon's communication device chirped with an urgent message from Rondamar. Her face fell as she scanned the contents, her usually vibrant blue skin turning ashen. "Jeffrey," she said, her voice tight, "the Benzite Council has declared a crisis situation. They're granting emergency powers to suppress your work." Jeffrey's brow furrowed as he processed the implications. "But why? This could benefit both our species." Before Talon could respond, the lab door burst open. Dr. Nakamura rushed in, his normally calm demeanor shattered. "We have a problem. There are Benzite enforcers on campus demanding Talon's immediate return." Jeffrey's heart raced as he glanced between Talon and the equations sprawling across the whiteboard. "We can't let them take her. Not when we're so close to a breakthrough." The sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. Jeffrey stepped forward, positioning himself between Talon and the door. When the enforcers entered, their imposing forms filling the doorway, Jeffrey raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Please," he said, his voice steady despite his racing pulse. "We need more time. What we're working on here could change everything." The lead enforcer hesitated, his gaze flickering between Jeffrey and Talon. In that moment of uncertainty, Dr. Nakamura sprang into action. "This way," he hissed, ushering Talon and Jeffrey toward a back exit. "There's a service tunnel that leads off campus." As they hurried through the narrow passageway, the sounds of pursuit faded behind them. Emerging into the crisp night air, they found a small group of sympathetic faculty members waiting with a nondescript vehicle. "We've arranged a safe house," one professor explained as they piled into the car. "You can continue your work there." Days blurred together as Talon and Jeffrey worked feverishly in their hidden sanctuary. They documented every aspect of the proof, determined to preserve their discoveries. Outside, tensions escalated. News of the Benzite crackdown sparked outrage, with protests erupting on both Earth and Rondamar. Zorgax's face appeared on holoscreens across the galaxy, his expression grim as he announced a media blackout. "For the safety and stability of both our civilizations, we must contain this dangerous misinformation." But even as Zorgax tightened his grip, a network of allied scientists reached out to Talon and Jeffrey. In encrypted communications, they shared their findings, revealing the staggering potential hidden within the proof's framework. "Faster than light travel," Talon breathed, her eyes wide as she reviewed the data. "Gateways to other universes. Jeffrey, do you realize what this means?" Jeffrey nodded, a mix of excitement and trepidation coursing through him. "We could uplift entire civilizations, but if Zorgax gets his hands on this..." Their fears were not unfounded. In the shadows, Zorgax conferred with a figure shrouded in darkness, Drask, the infamous bounty hunter. "Find them," Zorgax growled, "and make sure that proof never sees the light of day." As Drask's ships closed in on their location, Talon and Jeffrey prepared for what might be their final stand. They encrypted their findings, ready to broadcast them to every corner of the galaxy. "Whatever happens," Jeffrey said, clasping Talon's hand, "we've come too far to give up now." The sound of approaching engines filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. The roar of engines grew deafening as Drask's ships descended upon their location. Talon and Jeffrey exchanged a determined look before activating the broadcast sequence. As the encrypted data began streaming out across the galaxy, the safe house's defenses sprang to life. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as Drask's elite strike force stormed the abandoned industrial complex. Human and Benzite defenders returned fire, their weapons illuminating the night in brilliant flashes. Acrid smoke filled the air as stray shots ignited debris. "We need to move," shouted Dr. Nakamura, gesturing toward a concealed exit. Talon grabbed the data core containing Jeffrey's proof and sprinted after the professor. Jeffrey followed close behind, ducking as a plasma bolt scorched the wall inches from his head. They raced through twisting corridors, the sounds of battle echoing all around them. Suddenly, a high-pitched whine pierced the air. Talon's eyes widened in recognition. "Sniper!" she yelled, tackling Jeffrey to the ground. The warning came a split second too late. Jeffrey cried out in pain as the sniper's shot caught him in the shoulder, leaving a smoking wound. "Jeffrey!" Talon's voice was thick with concern as she helped him to his feet. "I'm fine," he grunted, though his face was pale with shock. "We can't stop now." They pressed on, Jeffrey leaning heavily on Talon for support. As they neared the underground hangar, the complex shook with a series of explosions. Their defenders were triggering the failsafe charges, buying them precious time. "Go!" Jeffrey urged, pushing Talon toward the waiting scout ship. "Take the proof. I'll hold them off." Talon's grip on his arm tightened. "Not without you." With a final burst of speed, they crossed the hangar floor and stumbled up the ship's boarding ramp. Dr. Nakamura was already at the controls, prepping for takeoff. As the engines roared to life, Talon caught a glimpse of Drask's menacing figure emerging from the smoke-filled corridor. The bounty hunter's eyes locked onto hers for a chilling moment before the hangar doors slammed shut. The ship rocketed into the night sky, leaving Earth and its pursuers far behind. In the cramped medical bay, Talon worked feverishly to stabilize Jeffrey's condition. His breathing was labored, his skin clammy to the touch. "Hold on," she whispered, her fingers intertwining with his. "We're not finished yet." The ship's comm system crackled to life with an incoming transmission. Dr. Nakamura's voice filled the cabin. "I've made contact with the Rylarians. They've agreed to grant us sanctuary." Talon's antennae twitched with a mixture of relief and apprehension. She had heard whispers of the Rylarians, outcasts who championed human benzite cooperation. Now they represented Jeffrey's best hope for survival. As the scout ship pushed deeper into space, Talon's gaze drifted to the data core secured beside her. Within its circuits lay the key to revolutionizing space travel, opening gateways between universes and forever changing the balance of power in the galaxy. She tightened her grip on Jeffrey's hand, silently vowing to see their work through to its world-altering conclusion. Behind them, Earth receded into the void, while ahead the turbulent gas giant that concealed the Rylarian base loomed ever larger. The Rylarian base materialized before them, a sprawling complex of crystalline spires and bioorganic domes nestled within the swirling atmosphere of a gas giant. As their scout ship docked, medical teams rushed to meet them, whisking Jeffrey away on a hover gurney. Talon followed close behind, her antennae quivering with anxiety. Will he survive? A Rylarian physician, his translucent skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns, nodded reassuringly. We'll do everything in our power. Before Talon could respond, the base shuddered violently. Alarms blared as explosions rocked the outer defenses. Through viewport windows, she glimpsed sleek, dark shapes emerging from stealth fields. Zorgax's drones. "Antimatter warheads detected!" a frantic voice shouted over the comm system. Chaos erupted as Rylarian defenders scrambled to their posts. Talon clutched the data core to her chest, her mind racing. She had to get Jeffrey and the proof to safety. Another blast sent tremors through the floor. Talon steadied herself against a wall, her eyes widening as she saw Drast's troops pouring through a breach in the base's outer shell. "This way!" a Rylarian scientist gestured urgently, leading Talon and Jeffrey's medical team toward a fortified wing. As they ran, plasma bolts sizzled past them. Talon ducked instinctively, her hearts pounding. They reached a reinforced bulkhead just as it began to seal. Inside the medical wing, organized chaos reigned. Doctors worked feverishly over Jeffrey's unconscious form, while Rylarian defenders established a perimeter. "I'm not leaving him," Talon declared, her grip on the data core tightening. The Rylarian scientist who had guided them, Zalara, nodded grimly. "Then we must find another way out." Her multifaceted eyes gleamed with commitment as she strode to a control panel. "I have an experimental drive based on your friend's equations. It might be our only chance." Outside, the sounds of battle intensified. Drask's forces were getting closer. Zalara's fingers flew over holographic controls, initializing systems and routing power. A low hum filled the air, building to a resonant thrum that set Talon's teeth on edge. "Quantum displacement activated," Zalara announced. "Prepare for—" Her words were cut off as the bulkhead exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris, Talon glimpsed Drask's menacing silhouette. A blinding flash engulfed them. Talon felt a sensation of stretching, compressing, twisting through impossible geometries. Then, abruptly, solidity returned. She blinked, disoriented. They were no longer in the medical wing, but aboard a sleek vessel. Through viewports, stars wheeled dizzyingly. "Rylarian stealth cruiser," Zalara explained, already moving to the helm. "The warp was successful, but they may have tracked our trajectory." Talon's gaze fell on Jeffrey, now ensconced in a stasis chamber. His face was pale, but his chest rose and fell steadily. A handful of survivors manned stations around the bridge. Talon felt a pang of grief for those left behind, but pushed it aside. They had to keep moving. "Where to now?" she asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. Zalara's fingers danced across navigation controls. "I have coordinates for a rendezvous, a coalition devoted to exposing the truth and stopping Zorgax." Talon nodded, her persistence hardening. Then let's not keep them waiting. As the cruiser surged into faster-than-light travel, Talon knew their journey was just the beginning. Behind them, Drask's relentless armada gathered, preparing to give chase across the stars. The Rylarian stealth cruiser emerged from faster-than-light travel, its sleek form materializing against the backdrop of a massive deep space observatory. Talon's antenna twitched with anticipation as she gazed upon the sprawling structure, its countless sensor arrays and transmission dishes stretching out like a metallic forest. As they docked, Talon felt a surge of relief wash over her. They had made it. The stasis pod containing Jeffrey hummed softly beside her, its occupant still pale but stable. The airlock hissed open, revealing a welcoming party led by a tall, dignified figure with piercing eyes and an aura of authority. "Admiral Zaran," Zalara said, inclining her head respectfully. "We've brought them." The Admiral's gaze swept over the ragtag group, lingering on Talon and the stasis pod. "Welcome to Haven," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "You've done well to make it this far." Talon stepped forward, clutching the data core to her chest. "We have Jeffrey's proof," she said, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "It needs to be decoded immediately." Admiral Zaran nodded gravely. "Our top specialists are standing by. Follow me." As they moved through the observatory's winding corridors, Talon couldn't help but marvel at the sheer scale of the operation. Beings from dozens of species worked in harmony, their focus intense as they pored over holographic displays and intricate machinery. They reached a heavily fortified section where a team of experts awaited them. Talon handed over the data core, her heart racing as she watched them get to work. Minutes stretched into hours as the codebreakers and quantum specialists delved into Jeffrey's equations. Talon paced restlessly, her gaze constantly drawn to the stasis pod where Jeffrey lay motionless. Suddenly, a commotion erupted among the specialists. This is impossible," one of them muttered, eyes wide with disbelief. Admiral Zaran strode forward. "Explain." The lead specialist, a multi-limbed being with compound eyes, gestured at the holographic display. "These equations, they're not just revolutionary, they're paradigm-shifting. Look here." It pointed a spindly appendage at a particularly dense cluster of symbols. "This outlines a method for safe traversal of galactic core singularities. And here," another section expanded, "a complete overhaul of warp field dynamics. With this, we could achieve near-instantaneous interstellar travel." The implications hit Talon like a physical force. She steadied herself against a nearby console, her legs shaking. But the revelations weren't finished. As the specialists dug deeper, they uncovered layers of self-updating algorithms, each more astounding than the last. Jeffrey's fractal intuition functions exploited the unique capabilities of the human mind, generating solutions that left even the most advanced Benzite computers baffled. Admiral Zaran's expression grew grave as he absorbed the magnitude of their discovery. "This changes everything," he said quietly. "We must act quickly." He turned to his strategists, already formulating plans. "Prepare Jeffrey for transfer to our advanced medical stasis. We'll need every resource at our disposal to heal him." As the medical team carefully maneuvered Jeffrey's pod, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. A harried technician burst into the room. "Admiral, we've detected Drask's armada entering the system. They found us." The room erupted into controlled chaos. Admiral Zaran barked orders, coordinating defenses and evacuation protocols. Talon's mind raced. How had Drask tracked them so quickly? "We've been betrayed," she realized aloud, her voice cutting through the din. All eyes turned to her as she continued. "But we can use this to our advantage." Quickly, Talon outlined her plan. They would transmit false data trails, leading Drask on a wild chase through uncharted space while concealing the observatory's true location. Meanwhile, elite strike teams would ambush the invasion force, sowing confusion and misinformation. Admiral Zaran listened intently, his eyes narrowing as he considered the strategy. After a moment, he nodded sharply. "It's risky, but it's our best chance. Make it happen." As the coalition forces mobilized, Talon cast one last look at Jeffrey's unconscious form. She placed a hand on the stasis pod, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hold on, Jeffrey. We're not done fighting yet." Outside the observatory's reinforced hull, the void of space lit up with the first exchange of weapons fire. The battle for the future of human and Benzite civilization had begun. The observatory shuddered as another volley of plasma torpedoes impacted its outer shields. Talon steadied herself against a console, her antennae quivering with tension. "Status report!" Admiral Zoran's voice cut through the chaos of the command center. A holographic display flickered to life, showing the positions of Drask's advancing armada. Zoran's eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical overlay. With a series of quick gestures, he highlighted key targets. "Strike teams Alpha through Delta, engage primary capital ships here, here, and here," he ordered. "Epsilon and Gamma squads, initiate false data trails. Make them believe Jeffrey's proof is being moved to the Cygnus cluster." Acknowledgements crackled over the comms as the elite coalition forces sprang into action. Talon watched in awe as swarms of stealth fighters emerged from cloaked hangars, their hulls shimmering with adaptive camouflage. On the main view screen, coalition strike teams executed precision attacks on Drask's fleet. Antimatter warheads detonated in carefully calculated patterns, overloading shield generators and creating gaps in the enemy's defenses. Meanwhile, data bursts of falsified intel flooded enemy comm channels, sowing confusion and misdirection. Talon turned to Admiral Zoran, her voice urgent. "We need to push harder on decoding Jeffrey's equations. This chaos is our chance to make real progress." Zoran nodded grimly. "Agreed. Take whatever resources you need." In the heart of the observatory, Talon assembled a team of the Coalition's brightest minds. The Benzite codebreaker Zuvika's tentacles flew across holographic interfaces, while the avian transdimensional theorist Kravis muttered complex calculations under his breath. "Look at this," Talon said, highlighting a section of Jeffrey's fractal math. "If we map these intuition functions onto higher dimensional manifolds..." Zuvika's eyes widened. "Impossible! That would create..." "Hyperspatial shortcuts," Kravis finished, his feathers dripping with excitement. "Intergalactic transit in the blink of an eye." As the implications sank in, Talon felt a surge of hope. They were on the verge of something revolutionary. Alarms blared once more. On the main bridge, Admiral Zoran received dire news. "Sir, Zorgax is rallying his remaining forces for an all-out assault, and Drask, he's regrouping. Intel suggests he's preparing to deploy planet-killer weaponry." Zoran's teeth clenched. "Then we accelerate our plans, begin construction of the mesostructural defenses, and prep the quantum replicators. We'll need every advantage we can get." As coalition engineers swarmed over the observatory's exterior, erecting massive gravity wells and self-configuring armor lattices, Talon redoubled her efforts. Time seemed to blur as she pored over endless streams of data, extracting universe-bending potential from Jeffrey's infinite fractal math. In a sealed medical bay, Jeffrey lay motionless in his cryogenic chamber. Talon paused in her work, resting a hand on the frosted surface. "We're close," she whispered. "Just hold on a little longer." Admiral Zoran's voice came over the intercom, tinged with both urgency and hope. "Talon, status update. The quantum replicators are online, and we're seeing unprecedented results. How soon can we deploy the new hyperspatial drives?" Talon's fingers flew across her console, running final simulations. "We're ready for the first test runs. With these, we can strike at Zorgax's command structure before he has time to react." As she spoke, the observatory's newly constructed megastructure hummed with power. Deep within its reinforced core, prototype ships waited, sleek, deadly, and capable of leaping across galaxies in an instant. Admiral Zoran nodded, his expression set with stubborn persistence. "Then let's show them what we can do." The observatory rocked violently as Drask's antimatter warhead detonated against its weakened shields. Talon stumbled, barely keeping her footing, as alarms blared throughout the command center. "Direct hit on Sector 7, a technician shouted. "Shields compromised." Admiral Zoran's face hardened. "Deploy Stealth Corps immediately. Multi-vector strikes on Drask's capital ships." As elite coalition forces streamed from concealed hangars, Talon's hearts froze. Sector 7, that was where Jeffrey's cryo chamber was located. She bolted from the command center, racing through smoke-filled corridors. The medical bay was in chaos when she arrived. Equipment sparked and sizzled, and the acrid smell of burning circuitry filled the air. Talon shoved her way through panicked staff to Jeffrey's cryopod. "Status!" she barked. A harried medic glanced up from a malfunctioning console. "The blast disrupted power to the stasis field. We're losing him." Talon's fingers flew across the controls, rerouting emergency power. Jeffrey's vital signs fluctuated wildly on the display. "Begin revival sequence," she ordered. "We have no choice." As the medical team scrambled to stabilize Jeffrey, Talon's communicator crackled to life. Zuvika's urgent voice came through. "Talon, we've made a critical discovery in Jeffrey's equations. These aren't just warp calculations, they're gateways to parallel universes." Talon's blood ran cold. "What?" "Worse," Zuvika continued. "The antimatter blast is causing quantum destabilization. If we don't contain it, we're looking at a multiversal catastrophe." The implications hit Talon like a physical blow. She looked at Jeffrey's unconscious form, knowing only his impossible mathematics could save them now. But as the cryopod's cover slid back, she saw the extent of the damage. Angry red burns marred Jeffrey's skin where the stasis field had failed. Worse, the medical scanners showed large sections of his neocortex registering as inert, the very areas responsible for his unprecedented mathematical insights. Krevis burst into the room, feathers askew. "We need those calculations now. Drask's forces are breaching the outer defenses." Talon's mind raced. She could upload Jeffrey's consciousness to their quantum matrices, sacrificing his physical form to derive the vital calculations. Or she could attempt a risky, illegal neural graft from a human donor. The choice tore at her. But as she gazed at Jeffrey's face, remembering all they had been through, she knew she couldn't sacrifice him. "Prepare for an emergency neural graft," she ordered, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "And get me a secure channel to Earth. We need to find compatible donors, now." As the medical team sprang into action, Talon turned to face the approaching sounds of battle. Drask's boarding parties were getting closer. She drew her weapon, prepared to defend Jeffrey at all costs. "Hold on," she whispered to his unconscious form. "We're not giving up on you yet." Talon's fingers flew across the neural graft console, initiating the controversial procedure. Alarms blared as Drask's forces breached the inner defensive rings. She barked orders into her comm unit. "Deploy extraction teams to Earth. We need human donors, now." Across the war-torn planet, coalition squads raced against time. In the crumbling ruins of New Moscow, Dr. Eva Kozlowski huddled in a dank subway tunnel, her brilliant mind wrestling with equations beyond mortal comprehension. The extraction team's footsteps echoed through the abandoned station. Ava's eyes widened as she spotted the advancing figures. She bolted, her ragged coat flapping behind her. But the team's stunners found their mark, and she crumpled to the grimy floor. Back in the observatory's medical wing, surgeons worked feverishly to map Eva's hyper-geometrical cognition architecture. The air crackled with tension as they prepared for the risky resonance overlay. Jeffrey's prone form convulsed as the graft began. Eva, strapped to an adjacent table, screamed in agony as their consciousness matrices collided at the quantum level. Talon watched, her hearts racing, as impossible equations blazed across the neural imaging displays. Outside, Admiral Zoran's voice crackled over the comm. "Hyperspatial strikes deployed. Drask's armada is falling back, but..." His words were cut off by a deafening explosion. Talon's blood ran cold as she realized Zoran's flagship had been hit. The observatory shuddered under renewed assault. Through the viewport, Talon saw Zorgax's reserve forces advancing. A nuclear salvo tore through the station's outer defensive frames. In the medical bay, Jeffrey and Eva's bodies arched in synchronous agony. The air itself seemed to warp around them as their minds fused, bending rationality and irrationality into chromatic supernovas of pure mathematical truth. Then silence. The incandescent neural matrices collapsed, leaving two motionless forms on the surgical tables. Talon stared in horror at the readouts. Flatlines. The procedure had failed. The doors to the inner sanctum burst open. Drask strode in, plasma cannon leveled at Talon's chest. Her comrades fell around her, cut down or captured. The alien commander's eyes gleamed with cruel triumph. "Your heresy ends here," Drask snarled. "I offer you a merciful death before Earth's pacification begins." Talon's hand tightened on her weapon, but she knew it was hopeless. She closed her eyes, waiting for the killing blow. But it never came. A presence stirred in the obsidian depths of the shattered matrices. Reality itself seemed to shudder and refold. Talon's eyes snapped open as twin points of awareness blazed to life where Jeffrey and Eva's bodies had lain. The air rippled with impossible energies. Drask's weapon clattered to the floor as he fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of what was unfolding before him. Talon gazed upon the pulsing, coruscating infinities that had once been Jeffrey and Eva. Their merged consciousness expanded outward, rewriting the very fabric of existence. The boundaries between dimensions blurred and shattered. In that moment, Talon understood the true cost of their victory. Humanity's impossible mathematics had birthed something beyond comprehension, a new cosmic order that transcended the primacy of any single race. As the transformed Eva Jeffrey entity's awareness washed over her, Talon wept. Not in sorrow, but in awe at the sacrifice that had uplifted them all into a new reality of limitless potential.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.